Hello and welcome to another MovieBoozer.com virtual pubcast. I'm your host, Ken Ekman, and I'm joined today by Hawk Ripshaw,
Hi.
Bill Arsenault,
Hey.
and that's it. And the rest are here on Gilligan's Isle.
Okay.
So,
Bill does not like the joke.
Yeah,
well,
right.
I was trying to think of like the skipper to
His wife.
Yeah, right. I was trying to think of something to say in response to that, but I was like, what about the Globetrotters? You know?
Oh yeah, I actually heard an interesting piece of trivia about that, specifically that music piece. How in the early seasons, it's they end with the movie star, and then they say "and the rest." So the professor and Marianne were not mentioned in the original, and the reason being is budget. Because apparently in those days, like it was unheard of to have a cast, like a starring cast of more than a certain amount of people. And so basically, two people, even though they were technically stars on the show for the first like season or two, were not given credit as like starring, even though there is absolutely no reason they shouldn't be, because anyone who's seen Gilligan's Island knows, these are clear. This is a show starring like 7 people. How do you
not include 2 of them? Yeah,
exactly. Anyway, just thought that was funny. Stupid Hollywood politicizing. So we've got a host of movies to discuss. We may as well jump right in. This first movie that we have is it didn't get a major theatrical release. It was mostly released into on demand, and the same thing happened to the first film from the same director and writer, S. Craig Zahler, which was his first film was Bone Tomahawk. So, Hawk, you saw Brawl in Cell Block 99 first. Both of us have been anticipating it hotly. So,
Yes,
since you
hotly,
yes, since you got into it first, I'm going to give you the first crack at it. What was your opinion of this movie?
I loved it. This is again every week I'm like, what are my favorites of the year? But we're it's that time of year where all the good shit comes out. But yes, like we both said, we've been really looking forward to this one, and I saw actually on Reddit there was a review mega thread for the movie, which usually tells me that the movie is available to watch, whether theatrically or VOD. It is in fact on Amazon right now for rental for $6.99. I did it, and I'm so happy I did.
It's worth every penny.
It really is, and to be honest with you, there's a very strong chance that as soon as we end here in a little while at the end of this podcast, I will go on and purchase it as well. That's how much I loved it. I don't purchase movies anymore, but this is worth it. Again, every penny to own it.
Yeah, I completely agree. As far as like movies worth purchasing, this is a movie that, first of all, it's much like Bone Tomahawk. This is a movie I want to introduce to people.
Yeah, it really is one that you just want other people to watch, so that A, you can talk about it, and B, you can have the bragging rights of having recommended it.
Exactly.
Yeah, so you're like the cool guy that's like, oh, that movie's awesome. Thanks for.
or
you're the cool guy. Hey.
Or the weird uncle who's like, check this out. It will give you nightmares.
Yes,
and it will.
It's the balls.
Stars Vince Vaughn, which a lot of movies never really emphasize Vince Vaughn's height. He is 6'5", and in this movie he has muscle mass to spare as well. So he is very intimidating looking in this movie. But it begins with him getting terminated from his towing job, and he gets home and he finds that his wife is in her car getting ready to leave him, and he demands to look at her phone and realizes that she's been seeing somebody else. So he tells her to go into the house and then proceeds to reenact the Street Fighter bonus level and beats the hell out of the car.
Yes.
Wait, what? He literally is like, I'm gonna reenact Street Fighter Bonus.
Well, no, it's a joke. But
if you ever played Street Fighter 2, one of the bonus stages in the game was you got to basically beat the living crap out of a car, and you got points for damage. And Vince Vaughn goes bare fist brawl on this car. It is it is the most violent treatment to a car that I've seen done by fists.
Yes, I mean punches the windows, rips off the.
He penetrates it even harder than Cameron Diaz.
Oh God!
Yes. Oh God!
In that one movie where
we all know the one.
Okay.
Oh, Lord.
I like how all you had to use Cameron Diaz and car in the same sentence, and we both knew what movie you were talking about.
Got it immediately. Yeah.
That's what it's known for.
For those in the audience, he's talking about the counselor.
And this is actually one of my favorite parts about the movie is that, you think that he's going to go in and beat his wife or something, but he goes in and he sits down and says, why? And they talk about it, and he decides to forgive her. And since he lost his job, he decides to go back into running drugs to help support them because she's going to be having a child. Or no, that's that until later. But anyway, she eventually becomes pregnant. They reconcile. And then later, they're in a house, a nicer house. He's running drugs. And because, once again, his morals, which is one of the most important parts of his character, land him in prison. And again, that's one of the best parts about the movie and about the character. And actually, I read this in an interview with Vince Vaughn. It's why he took on the role, because he was very touched by this character. Is somebody comments on his muscles, and he said, "I never hit somebody I don't have to," or something like that.
Right. There's a scene where someone's trying to convince him to join boxing, and he's morally against it because he's decided that's past him. He doesn't have to do that.
And the only reason that he does get put in prison is because he makes a decision to come back and prevent bloodshed, prevent police from getting killed by two people that come with him against his will. Mm-hmm. So it's very interesting that when you look at a trailer and a poster for a movie like Cell Block 99, that it is not a killer, violent character in the sense of like John Wick, who just lays waste to people because he likes killing or has to. But Vince Vaughn is at his character, Brad. Actually, it's Bradley. If anybody calls him Brad,
don't call him Brad.
Bradley. Yeah, he'll always correct you, even if you're in a life or death situation, he will correct you to Bradley. He resists bloodshed and violence at any chance. He does not like it, which is an interesting angle for a character in a movie like this.
Yeah, and with that, as a character who's essentially he's against he uses violence only when it is really only when the situation requires it. And the fact that he really only uses violence as either reprisal or for or for self-defense, it kind of reminded me of all things one of the hippie-ish, one of the most hippie-ish movies ever. Have either of you ever seen Billy Jack?
No.
Okay, so Billy Jack, for those unfamiliar, is this movie from 60s, early 70s. I forget the exact year, but basically the premise is he's this kind of I assume he's part Native American at least, and it takes place out in the mountains, and he's trying to save this like camp from being destroyed by the citizens of this town, who are redneck, racist creeps. And he does that by beating the crap out of people for it's basically like he's an avenging hippie hero.
Okay.
So now throughout all the hippie aspects, and just have him be someone who, he talks a good game, and that's specifically because it can back that game up 100%.
Yeah,
that's kind of. Go ahead,
I was going to agree with you, and that kind of also feeds into the dialogue in the movie, which is Again, I for some reason I did not know that Zahler was a novelist until you told me. But his panache for dialogue really comes through in this, even more so than in Bone Tomahawk. With one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie being in the interrogation room. Now, I can't remember exactly what the conversation went like, but there was sort of an interplay between the two characters, like they both knew what the other was going for, but were sticking to their own guns on it, where, the police officer is like, why don't you tell me the names? And then Vince Vaughn's character, Bradley, says, well, I don't know names, and I can't name them, and I won't. And the officer says, well, what if I showed you pictures? You wouldn't have to say names. You would just point and nod. And there's such the interplay in their dialogue is just so crisp and so great, and it really, really sucks you in.
Right. Well, the feeling you get, the sense you get, is he knows the dance, and there is an interrogation dance, and this cop is not going to, get one over on him. And it's really, it's just such a what makes it work so well and so amazing is the fact that it's with the dialogue, Zahler doesn't have his characters talk down. No one speaks any kind of like slang language really in his movies. It's more like they have this. It's very stylized, much like in a Quentin Tarantino movie, where everyone in a Quentin Tarantino movie is a pop culture junkie.
But they're not pop culture junkies.
Right. What I'm saying is, in a Tarantino movie, everyone's a pop culture junkie. In a Zahler movie, everyone is very surprisingly well read.
Yeah, they're all very articulate, and there's like you said, a dance, and it's got the feel of those movies like Wes Anderson or Aaron Sorkin or Quentin Tarantino, but the dialogue doesn't suck its own dick quite as much.
Well, right. It's quietly stylistic.
Yes.
It's not trying to impress you. It knows that it's good, and I'm not surprised at all that Zahler comes from a novelistic background, just because of how incredibly well written the language is. It feels so believable, and so it feels believable, even though it's stylized to the point where it's not something you would typically hear like a person speak. It feels right, which is
yes. Also, as a side note, I wanted to point out too that you and I are talking with a knowledge of Zahler's filmography. Bill has actually not seen Bone Tomahawk.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Now? I will say, since you have not seen it, Bill, I believe it's available on Amazon Prime, so it doesn't cost any money as long as you have that subscription, and I heartily recommend it.
Do you hotly recommend it?
Hotly anticipate, heartily recommend. How about that?
Okay, all right.
But yeah, I mean, Bill, again, we want to also point out and reiterate that Zahler is one of the most exciting new talents on the film scene, and definitely worth checking out and getting into.
What superhero movie do you think they're going to have him adapt?
Oh God.
Because they always do that with the new up and coming directors. They're like, he's got fire.
Especially Marvel.
Okay, yeah. If he were to actually adapt a superhero movie, first of all, I don't think he's a director who would do that.
He wouldn't want to, no.
Yeah, I don't think so. But if that was an opportunity that was given to him and he did take it,
I could see Zahler rebooting Ghost Rider.
Oh, Ghost Rider.
You know what? I can because what Zahler does in an amazing way is brutal stories that if they weren't as brilliantly written as they were, you might almost call them schlocky.
He could probably do Punisher as well, but I think at the moment we're a little oversaturated with Punisher, with the Thomas Jane short film Dirty Laundry, and then the Netflix series coming out later this month.
Mm-hmm.
But I think feasibly a Marvel film could do Ghost Rider, although I don't really think Marvel Studios is going to be a Ghost Rider movie because Ghost Rider has already factored into the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV show. But that might be the likely one in any case.
Yeah, well, as far as that, I just don't think he's going to do superhero stuff.
No, he won't.
But that said, he does work within genres because Bone Tomahawk is ostensibly a Western with a brutish twist, and Cell Block 99 is a prison film with a brutish twist. And I think it's time we reference the elephant in the room that we haven't talked about, which is how incredibly fucking brutally violent this movie is. Hawk didn't hear what I said.
No, I'm sure he did. He's just muting. He muted himself. He was having a coughing fit.
Okay. Well, here's the thing: the Bone Tomahawk has a scene in it that might be the single most disgusting piece of practical gore effects that I've seen in a movie. And
is it kind of like Eastern Promises, with the shower night fight?
No, it's way worse.
Yeah, it's I don't want to say it because you got to see it. Okay. But Brawl in Cell Block 99. I don't want to say this comparison because it's gonna. So I won't. What I'll say instead is, the people whose responsibility it is to make dummies. They had a lot of fun in this movie.
I'm just imagining now that you've just said, dummies. I'm thinking like dummies being thrown off of stuff, railings and whatnot.
Like in the Beastie Boys Sabotage music video?
Yeah, sure.
Well, just the people responsible for for just building synthetic humans for putting in a film had a lot of fun with the numerous ones they had to put in this one.
Numerous ones.
Yeah.
All right, Vince, go and fuck up some dummies.
There is much fucking up of dummies in this movie, and here's the thing: that's okay. I have no qualms with dummies being used in movies, especially when they're used properly.
And also the first action sequence of in Brawl in Cell Block 99 doesn't occur until almost an hour into the movie. It's a 2-hour movie. So almost the half-hour mark, or almost the halfway mark, is when you see the first action scene. And so throughout this whole film so far, excuse me, that's some water went down the wrong pipe. Throughout the whole film thus far, you've had this steady build in tension and energy, because there comes a point where while he's in prison, none other than Udo Kier visits the prison and tells Bradley, my employer has told me that if you don't get yourself into solitary confinement in this new prison, then we will murder your wife's unborn child, very graphically and violently. So well, now this pacifist.
Dare I say it's not just murder. In fact, they're actually intent on keeping it alive.
That's right.
Basically deforming his unborn child.
How the fuck is that possible?
That's actually good to note, because this is in a modern grindhouse movie. So it doesn't have the dirty aesthetic. It doesn't have like some of the really wacky stuff from the grindhouse era, but it adheres to that era in tone and in some of its stylings in terms of dialogue and plot.
Right, and the thing is, like I said, Zoller manages to make a incredibly grossly realistic feeling, schlock kind of movie. Because I'm not saying that the movie is like schlocky, but there's things in it that in other films would be considered schlock.
Okay. Yes, but he has such a great handle on the schlock that when someone says, "We're going to reach up into your wife's uterus and cut off your unborn child's limbs," that you believe that is a thing that can happen and will happen in this movie.
Yes.
And it's not funny because it's fucking terrifying.
It's that's the thing. It's terrifying, and it's so terrifying that I found myself nervously laughing in this movie.
Yes. Yeah.
Because you really don't know how to feel about what you're seeing sometimes, and
also that's Udo Kier telling you this.
Yes.
You know, like you gotta factor that in too. Like wait a minute, what? You're telling me this shit? Yeah.
If I die before Udo Kier, I want him to read my eulogy. Hopefully I don't, or hopefully he just lived to be 200 years old. But
right.
it all is a sort of like really upsetting alien feeling that you don't really know how to react to it. And Zeller also does this with the way that he films the prison sequences, is that I have not in a very long time seen a television show or movie that really emphasizes the horrible, suffocating feeling of being in prison.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like I watched the show Oz, and Oz really, not even Oz nails it as much as this film manages to do it.
Yep, Oz, The Night Of. I mean, none of them do it quite like this does.
And Oz had 8 seasons to do it, and it so
no, it had 6 seasons.
6 seasons, whatever.
Yeah.
Well, you've seen Oz too, I take it.
Yeah,
I watched it in a marathon.
Yeah,
nice.
Like 2 weeks or something.
Not one marathon.
3.5 seasons of Oz are some of the greatest television out there, and then what the frick happens?
Yeah, it kind of goes off the rails and becomes something completely different.
The plot that officially jumps the shark is the plot about the drug that makes you older.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, that's when I was like,
it was supposed to be testing on prisoners against their will, or maybe not against their will, but testing on them without them knowing what exactly is going on.
Right, but the show never recovers from that. It's like
it has a hard time, yes, and it never really gets back on its feet.
There's a few things from there that work okay, but it's just like from where it went, it just goes too silly.
Yeah.
The drug that makes you older. Yeah. This will work for prisoners. This way it will cut down on the population because...
Right, the reasoning they use on the show is that we're going to shave years off your sentence because you're older now.
You know, that's something that the Zoller could probably make work if he had given that. He was given that to put in a movie of his. Because... shit, what's his name? Who's like the super evil prison warden in this movie, Ken?
Oh, Don Johnson.
Don Johnson is in this movie as a cigar chomping guy who straps like taser belts to inmates, and like in his solitary confinement cells, there's just broken glass on the floor. He's a fucking psychopath.
Yeah, if you're in solitary confinement, your entire prison floor is full of broken glass. It's ridiculous.
Okay.
But again, that's something that in lesser hands would be like, what the fuck are they doing? That's ridiculous. But in this one, it's like, Jesus, that's fucked up. And he made it really scary and dark and awesome. But
so you're saying Zoller should have directed Human Centipede 3?
What I'm saying is no one should have directed Human Centipede.
Yes.
You're right. That movie was batshit terrible.
Yes, it was, which is, considering how good Human Centipede 1 was.
Yeah, it was absolutely deplorable.
Wait, what?
And did you see the first one?
Yeah, no, yeah,
yeah,
I saw it, and how good it was. No,
it was a fun movie. Come on,
it did a lot more. It was a lot more interesting than its premise.
I would say it's a fun movie, but it's not a good movie.
It is an entertaining movie.
It's entertaining. Yes.
It is an effective,
especially when the man who's Japanese shits in the girl's mouth. And he's like, "Please forgive me," you know. And Dieter Laser's like, "Yes, feed."
And she's like,
"Ooh, God damn it!"
Right.
Yeah.
Oh man, I forgot about the sound effects in that movie.
Yeah, right. And then you have to watch the 3-person centipede walk up the stairs. They're like, okay, left foot, right foot, or left knee, right knee, and they're doing it, and it's It's like, oh god.
Good shit.
Oh God, indeed.
Yes. Oh, God,
But
indeed,
yes,
yeah.
unlike those movies, Brawl in Cell Block 99 is effective. It is fantastic in almost every sense. I can't think of a single thing in that movie that I could fault. Like, it's 2 hours long, which is initially like, why is a movie called Brawl in Cell Block 99 2 hours long? And then you watch it and you know why, because it is a very brutal movie, but it is a character study. And then Ken, tell me what you said earlier about Zoller carving out his new subgenre with his 2 films so far.
So specifically, what I was saying, as far as that, I think he created a new subgenre of deliberate and sharply written character studies with an absolutely gruesome finale.
Yes. And then his next movie is going to be called Dragged Across Concrete.
Which ironically happens in this movie.
Is it really called that?
And their hallmark of his subgenre is that the titles refer to the finales of the movies.
Yeah.
But,
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Because, Bone Tomahawk ends with some brutality in terms of a tomahawk made out of bone. Brawl in Cell Block 99 ends with that. Dragged Across Concrete ostensibly will do the same thing. It stars Mel Gibson and Vince Vaughn as 2 cops whose very brutal interrogation techniques come to light, and they kind of go into the criminal underworld to continue utilizing them for some end. I can't remember what it is, but I'm very excited to see what that is.
Can I just say, Hawk, for a moment there, you said concrete. I was thinking Dragged Across Cronkite.
Ew, talking about a weird movie dealing with sexual harassment or something.
Oh God.
Dragged across.
Is not Dragged Across Concrete like the most metal movie title you can think of?
Yeah, that's pretty metal.
It's pretty metal. I don't know if it's the most
specifically
metal.
It's concrete, but
it's pretty concrete. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
That's a movie with some concrete ideas.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Bill, what did you see this week?
I saw The Killing of a Sacred Deer, which this is an interesting thing to note. A couple years ago, I saw The Lobster at a press screening, which was Yorgos Lanthimos' previous film, starring Colin Farrell.
Say out loud.
Yes, starring Colin Farrell and Rachel Weisz. The Lobster the movie opens with a scene of a woman driving in the countryside somewhere in Europe, presumably. That's what it looks like. It looks like Ireland or something. And she stops her car, pulls over, stops her car, gets out of the car, and proceeds to shoot a deer in the head.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how the movie starts. Then it cuts to the plot proper, which is Colin Farrell getting divorced and having to start a new relationship, or he gets turned into an animal.
Right.
The Killing of a Sacred Deer, when you think of that title, when I thought of that title, I was like, oh, so it's going to have a relation to The Lobster, because The Lobster opened literally with the killing of a deer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's loosely connected, but it's not really. I can't really figure out exactly what the through line is between The Lobster and The Killing of a Sacred Deer. But I guess technically that doesn't really matter. This was just my own theory when I went into seeing this movie, that they were connected other than being directed by the same person. Killing of a Sacred Deer stars Colin Farrell and Nicole Kidman as a doctor couple. One is a surgeon. They both might be surgeons, but basically the movie starts with Colin Farrell performing a surgery, and it's not quite clear if it went wrong or not. Mm-hmm. But we cut to later. He is hanging out with this young teenage boy. Nothing perverse is going on. He's literally just mentoring him, really. But it's kind of, they're having weird conversations with weird subtext going on. Nothing sexual. It's just there's something eerie happening between the two of them. There's this weird energy going on. Like they're sitting down, and Colin Farrell is like, "So what did you do today?" He's speaking really Irish and everything, and the kid is like, "Can I have some fries? I want some fries." And he's like, "Yes, go have your fries." You know, so he goes have.
Is that your Irish accent, by the way?
Yeah, I'm not. It could be Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm not really good at doing accents, especially Irish, because it's so specific. You know, most accents are so specific, actually.
Well, you got to be careful with the Irish accent, because if you go too far into the Leprechaun, you know.
You didn't go have my fries.
I'm from Killarney.
Well, anyway, the way they converse is really weird. Like, he and this teenage boy, they French fries they're talking about. I mean, they're talking about like, oh, I got this watch the other day. Do you like watches? You know, it's got a leather collar on it. And, you know,
one thing Zach mentioned when we were watching The Lobster together, we actually saw it at the same time. His comment was, you know, it's very obvious that Yorgos Lanthimos' first language was not English, and yet somehow it benefits his English language screenplay.
There is kind of something lost in translation and also found in translation with the way he kind of interprets everything back in, or reinterprets his dialogue back into American English. It's really weird, but it gives this quality, this element to every conversation that happens in the movie. Something's not right.
And I love that feeling about his movies, like where his movies exist in a world that is like 3 or 4 degrees off from what we already know.
Yes.
Right. I mean, I would say the movie that is by far the farthest is The Lobster, because in that world, it's a society where if you lose a romantic relationship, you have to go off to this retreat and you're given 60-something days to find new love, or you're turned into an animal.
Right.
But it's sinister enough that could be some settlement like in Europe somewhere that's surrounded by trees like the fucking Village or something.
No, it's set up with its own rules to where you kind of understand it, and it's relatable enough to where, you know, you're kind of comfortable with that surrounding. Like, okay, I recognize the feeling of some of this, so I know where I'm at. It's not like you're completely out of the loop, you know. But with Killing of a Sacred Deer, it's all very clear that we're on Earth for the most part. I mean, it's not an alien movie in any way. There's no there's a couple degrees that are off, but it's mostly in how people interact with one another. Things, however, do get loony towards the middle. Things go sideways with the young teenage boy. He starts paying too much attention to Colin Farrell's doctor character and his family.
Oh,
he's almost like stalking them. You know, it has to do with the fact that Colin Farrell operated on his father, and his father died in the procedure. So Colin Farrell's character feels a little guilty about it and wants to kind of mentor this kid, but the kid is way too attached.
That's not a spoiler, is it?
No, it's not a spoiler. Okay. But things do get loony at a certain point when this isn't a spoiler, but I'm not going to go too much farther into it other than to say that his kids start developing symptoms and disease-like things start happening to them, where it's almost the idea that they've been hexed comes up.
Okay.
You know, and that's about as far as I'm going to take that. And then the movie becomes something completely different. It goes from comedy to domestic drama, like with the snap of a finger. You know what I mean? It's really kind of abrupt how it switches gears. But even when switching gears, it maintains its absurdity. It maintains just how silly and strange this scenario is. Even if you're not supposed to be laughing, you kind of feel like you could be laughing if given the right amount of material. I was laughing throughout the first half completely. I thought it was hilarious. But when things start going south, that's when it kind of, you start seeing the seams in this family structure. You know, like the mother getting more and more desperate. the father also getting desperate, but in different ways. The children just, trying to mend their relationships with their parents and trying to become their favorites, almost like in a competition. Basically, this movie reminds me of a Pasolini movie called Teorema. It's a movie where General Zod from Superman 2, what's his name? The actor's name?
Oh, the actor. I thought you were talking about
not literally Zod, but I mean the actor who plays Zod
in Superman Returns.
Superman 2.
Terrence Stamp, right?
Terrence Stamp. Terrence Stamp arrives at the home of this upper-class bourgeoisie family home, and he subsequently has sex with every member of the family. And in doing so, he changes their lives drastically. The mother becomes attached to teenage boys who look like him. The son becomes this upper-class artist. The daughter goes comatose, and the father, who's this businessman, becomes a socialist.
And this is all attributed to him fucking them.
Yes, and he becomes a socialist and sheds his clothes and his business of everything and walks off into the desert. It's like this weird movie where this stranger or this character interjects himself or herself into the lives of this seemingly okay and well-to-do family and completely fucking everything up.
By the way,
it's called Teorema.
Okay.
Teorema, Rema.
I'm definitely seeing this movie now.
I think it's also called The Theorem or something. But I saw it back when Netflix was just DVD service, and and I remember thinking oh, this is what he was doing other than Sallow.
Yeah.
Well,
so, he's done a lot of stuff.
He's done a lot of stuff, yeah. But I mean, this was the other movie I saw other than Sallow.
Right.
That was his. Sallow, of course, I had to see first.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just not see that movie if you want to explore past.
You might wish to unsee it, but
yeah. But I would attribute I would make claim there's a lot of good artistic merit in that film, even if it is fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
But going back to Killing of a Sacred Deer, it reminded me of Teorema in those ways, in how this young character kind of fucks everybody's shit up and messes with the family structure and dynamics and causes such trauma. However, the movie, however good the movie is at doing its absurdity and its humor, and even towards the end, its domestic drama, it kind of ends flatly. It left me deflated in the end. It didn't quite stick the landing, so to speak.
Some people said that about The Lobster, but I actually really liked the.
I love The Lobster. The Lobster, that I was looking forward to this movie because of The Lobster. I haven't seen Dogtooth, so I can't speak to Dogtooth. Although it is on Fandor, so I have no excuse not to see. Okay, I'll see Dogtooth. I'll put that on my list with the several million other movies I have to watch.
I did not care for the ending of The Lobster. However, I respect the hell out of that movie, and that's why I still really want to see this. Okay, well, The Lobster, to me, ends really well. It ends with a nice question, a nice ambiguous one at that. It's a little salty, that ending. It's a little like... I thought it was... After all the comedy, after all this absurdity, you're going to end like that. But I kind of respected that, and I kind of liked that. The way Killing of a Sacred Deer ends, it's almost too familiar. Like, I've seen movies end like this before, and I don't much care for this kind of ending. Okay. I mean the end ending, like the final shots. I'm not talking about like the climax or anything. The climax is fine, but and everything leading up to the climax is more than fine. This is a well-made movie, and it's wonderfully. I keep bringing up the word absurd. I think it's the perfect word to describe this film, but
was the point where I was like, okay, that's the resolution. That's it didn't really do anything for me. It kind of didn't. It didn't ask any questions. It didn't answer any questions. It didn't do anything new. It didn't top itself. It wasn't even a punctuation mark. It was more like an ellipsis. It was more like a shrug, like
like an Atlas shrug.
No, not an Atlas shrug.
Do not mention that.
Do not do that.
If there's anyone who has a right to mention that movie, it's the person who sat through all 3 of those in the theater.
In the theater, yes.
I remember that you did your own drinking game for that movie.
Yeah, and I was so completely plastered by it that I had to rewatch the second G.I. Joe movie in theater
just to get sober.
You couldn't like you could barely. You had to use context to figure out what you were typing to us in the chat.
Yeah.
Oh. But I would have been the same way. So I respect you for going to see those movies and falling on that sword, because they do not look good. And I even noted that they changed the actor.
Yes, they totally changed all the actors.
Yeah, they did change everybody like every single time.
Yeah, and I think that there was like 1 or 2 people who were like in a couple, like, who were in the first. No, basically, there's no one consistent through the whole thing.
No,
and
that's too bad. Well, not too bad. But.
No, it's not too bad. It's half of what makes it worth watching, because it's interesting to see a franchise that just completely fucked.
They had a second
where they just did not have their shit together. And
they had a crowdfund, didn't they?
Yeah, they had a crowdfund for the third one.
And of course, Republican conservatives were like, "Oh yeah, we need this movie. Yeah.
Let's make this movie. It's gonna be great." And then like somebody else swooped in and just fucking funded the remaining 80% that they couldn't with the crowdfunding.
They couldn't even do that. Like clearly the demand isn't there, but let's shove this movie down your throat anyways.
So switching gears here, or wait a second. Oh my God, brainwave here. There should totally be a Being John Malkovich like movie called Switching Gears, in which person inhabits the mind of Richard Gere.
But Richard Gere has a twin brother. That's why they switch.
Oh, it's
like when you enter the portal, you don't know if you're going to be handsome, attractive actor Richard Gere or the
brainless
alcoholic Roger Gere.
Yeah, that's yeah.
It's a good idea.
It's one of those, it's one of those movies where the title is as far as I'll ever get. But I love it.
You enter the mind of a gerbil.
Hold on, I've got a friend that I'm gonna.
Oh my God!
Let her know.
You enter the mind of Richard Gere via like one of those gerbil tunnels.
Yes.
Right, which goes up his ass.
Oh God!
Because that's the rumor. Yeah.
I have a feeling this is going to be one movie. You know how Being John Malkovich managed to get John Malkovich to appear.
Yeah, we wouldn't be able to get Richard Gere for this particular.
Yeah, no, that's never going to happen.
He might. Well, isn't he like a Buddhist or something? He might be okay with the idea of it, but.
Wait, what? Okay,
remember he was on an episode of The Simpsons, and he.
I know he's a Buddhist, but like, you're talking about okay with the.
Right, like he's at peace. He's not.
He's at peace with the fact that people think he shoved a gerbil up his ass. Yeah.
Yes, like he's like, revenge is for the weak. I have sought Zen and peace, and I have achieved it, or something. So maybe he's all right with if some people want to mock him.
Probably. I mean,
for his dalliances.
I mean, Richard Gere does seem like a pretty chill dude, honestly.
Yeah,
he does.
I'm chill.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah,
it's chill.
He chills his gerbils in the freezer first. He wants them to be stiff and hard. Let's stop this conversation. I'm starting to think of myself.
Yeah, what's the next movie on the list?
Like an exclamation. Chill your gerbils out, dude.
This should be a T-shirt.
So next on the list.
What are we talking about? This is the day after Halloween, and we're losing our minds.
So Marshall is a autobiography about. Oh, not auto. Jeez.
No, it's not. He didn't write and direct it himself.
No, he did. Is there such thing as an autobiographical movie? Really? I mean,
what about that Denzel Washington film that Dave Chappelle made fun of?
John Q.
No,
a movie based on an autobiography, but I mean like a movie where it's actually like. I guess there are movies that are written and directed by a person.
I know that. What's his name? The baseball star. Starred in it, not Babe Ruth, but
well, Babe Ruth starred in the Babe Ruth story, and it's
notorious. Yeah, Babe Ruth did that.
Ever made.
And he was also in Pride of the Yankees. But I'm thinking of the famous African American baseball star,
Jackie Robinson.
Jackie Robinson, that's right. He was in the Jackie Robinson story, and that was interesting. You know, like it wasn't great, but it was kind of fun. You know, to see him play himself.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I think those are the closest, comparisons we can make to something that would be purely an autobiographical film.
So Marshall is it's a biographical film starring Chadwick Boseman in his third friggin' biopic in I think 3 or 4 years.
He also did Jackie Robinson.
Yeah, he did Jackie Robinson. He did James Brown, right?
James Brown. Yeah, that's right.
And now Thurgood Marshall
with the James Brown one, but
what?
He disagrees with that casting, I think.
Yes.
Oh, I made no comment as to the artistic quality of the films. I said this is the third biopic.
I'm just saying that I think that I really don't think he embodied the spirit of James Brown at all, but that's just me.
So you don't feel that he was good? Da-na-na-na-na-na.
I feel good.
He might have felt good, but he didn't look good.
So good.
Well, he looked pretty good. He's pretty handsome. I mean,
yeah, he did. He's handsome, and he had the moves. But
you know who had the greatest James Brown back in the day was Eddie Murphy.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the Saturday Night Live sketch Eddie Murphy's Hot Tub Party? Or not Eddie Murphy, Brown's Hot Tub Party.
Yeah, that would be a gross one to go to.
Yeah, Eddie Murphy's Hot Tub Party. It's like, get in the hot tub, and he puts his toes in the hot tub and goes, ow!
Oh, right, yeah. I know Ben Stiller does a great Bruce Springsteen.
And Ben Stiller also does a great Tom Cruise.
Well, yeah, of course he does a great Tom Cruise.
But, so Marshall is, it's a departure from those biopics in that both of those movies kind of were career biopics that focused on the most pivotal moments in the life of the person. 42 is all about the pivotal struggle that Jackie Robinson had, establishing himself as the first major league player who was allowed in, the modern era, who was African American. And then, of course, James Brown, is a career spanning biopic. Marshall, on the other hand, takes, I would say, a very smart choice. Instead of focusing on the greatest moment in the career, it focuses on just a moment in the career of Thurgood Marshall. Now, first of all, before we go forward, because I'm the guy with the poli-sci major here, I don't want to make assumptions. Do you guys know who Thurgood Marshall is?
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
And based on the trailer, I would guess that this movie takes a kind of interesting stylistic approach to his story, almost like a legend, the legend of Thurgood Marshall, as opposed to Thurgood Marshall.
Well, not really.
I've heard the contrary.
It doesn't go legendary. It's actually very humanizing.
Really? Because in the trailer, he was like beating people up. He was like drinking water from a white man's fountain.
That was
like, I'm a rebel. Like he was doing stuff like that. And I was thinking to myself, oh my God, they turned Thurgood Marshall into a vigilante.
That's the black
superhero
influence of the trailer. They definitely go for the he's bringing to the white man kind of thing.
So the movie doesn't really do that.
No, which is now that scene is in the movie. It's not quite as hardcore as it appears, but it's still a great scene actually.
Okay.
The fact of the matter is the movie is at its heart a solidly told courtroom drama that just happens to have factual basis in that it's about a person who later in his career would become the first black Supreme Court justice.
Yeah.
So, and the plot basically at the film takes place in 1940-41, and Thurgood Marshall at the time was an attorney for the NAACP, and his job as the attorney was to basically take cases of wrongfully accused black people and defending them. And so a lot of what this case depends on is the fact that he believes in the innocence of the person who's accused. And anyway, so what ends up happening is he goes to Connecticut, where this man who was a chauffeur is accused of murdering is accused of murdering his or not murdering, I'm sorry, is accused of attempting to murder and also, raping this woman.
Mm-hmm.
And the woman claims that he appeared at the house and completely uninvited and took advantage of her, and it was this horrible story of this person taking advantage of the good turn that he was dealt, getting this job that that he was hard pressed for. Anyway, and this was Connecticut, so not a stereotypically racist area, but that Connecticut is also rich white people, so that's you don't need stereotype to say that's going to be racist. And basically what ends up happening is Marshall petitions to be made to be given power as a out-of-state attorney, and he's declined that, which means that he has to work with an attorney in the state, and that basically he's only on an observational basis. He cannot take part in the court argument, and so he has to team up with this guy named Sam Friedman, who's a Jewish attorney with almost no defense background. His background is mostly in civil suits, and specifically insurance law. And through him, he has to communicate his words, which makes for kind of an interesting dynamic in that the two have to work together, because one is more experienced in trial law, and the other is the one who's actually conducting the trial.
Yeah. What do you got? What's in these briefcases? Guns.
Yes.
Books, Mr. Whatever your name is.
Friedman.
Mr. Friedman. Books.
Anyway, Josh Gad, really great role.
Really brings it.
Brings it, and Boseman also. It's a solid performance piece movie. Good acting overall. But I would say the one thing is it never strays far from the fact that it is basically at its heart a courtroom drama. Because it's basically just a courtroom drama. All of those courtroom drama beats are hits. So if you've seen movies like Primal Fear, if you've seen movies like Time to Kill, or The Rainmaker, everything that happens in the court is pretty predictable.
Yeah.
Now, I would say it's better than most of those movies I mentioned, Primal Fear being the exception.
Oh, yeah.
Because that movie's pretty damn solid.
A Time to Kill, however, that movie's like just pure schlock.
Oh, yeah. Complete and utter schlock. But
Southern schlock.
Oh, yeah. Well, that movie is literally, Southern people be racist, right?
Well, yeah. That's actually kind of... I live here.
You're not wrong.
You're not wrong. It's just...
Right, but,
maybe it's not...
What I'm saying, that's like all that it has to say. It's a movie.
I know, yeah. You know, my favorite line in that movie was when the guy calls Ashley Judd, you know, Matthew McConaughey's wife in the movie, and she's like, "Who is this?" And he's like, "Mickey Mouse." And then later it's like, "Oh, he's got a Mickey Mouse tattoo. That's why he said Mickey Mouse."
Yeah.
Oliver Platt's in the movie, like, oh, okay. Well, these, you know. I don't know why I mentioned that.
Oliver Platt's in the movie, and you know
he was in Ready to Rumble. I think that's why I brought up him. And we were before we got the broadcast. Hawk Ripshaw told us he just joined the WWE Network as a subscriber, and Ready to Rumble was the WCW movie they made before WCW went under and was bought by the WWF, or now WWE, and it was their attempt to get more fans. And the plot of the movie revolves around Oliver Platt, this fat, out-of-shape wrestler, basically trying to re-energize his career and gain redemption.
Wait, Oliver Platt played a character who wasn't like the crony of a politician in a movie?
Yeah, I know, right? But he was just some jerk-ass, out-of-shape wrestler.
It just shocks me because he's been so typecast as a character actor.
Well, he was in Lake Placid. He didn't play a crony of a politician in that movie.
I guess, but that was Lake Placid, and it's.
I liked Lake Placid as a kid. I mean, I haven't seen it, you know, in a decade or two, but when I did see it, I thought, it's kind of funny. You know, it's cute. It's not great, but it was
the Sharknado of the time that it was made.
It's way better than Sharknado. I mean, like, it's actually, you know,
yeah, I mean,
good movie by comparison.
Marginally better, I would say.
Marginally better, yes. My favorite scene in the movie is when this is not related to Marshall at all, but
no,
the deputy sheriff, who's a woman, is with Oliver Platt, and Oliver Platt's about to get in the water to find the alligator, and Lake Placid,
find that alligator.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, and she's like, "Look, I'll have sex with you if you don't jump in the water." And I was like, "Wait, what?" You're gonna have sex with Oliver Platt? Nothing against Oliver Platt, but I mean, like, that's you could say, "I'm going to arrest you." You don't have to say, "I'll have sex with you if you get out of the water." You know, I was like, that's a little too desperate. You know, it's a little too, like, you know, like, overboard. Like, just arrest his ass.
Yeah.
You're a cop. You can do it. Yeah, you have the law on your side.
The law.
The lure.
The law. Breaking the law. None of this has anything to do with Marshall.
Well, breaking the law does. Because it's technically
a legal drama. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
So, Marshall, decent movie. I would say wait for streaming, but worth seeing.
Okay.
And that's all I have to say about that.
All right.
I think people dump on Forrest Gump a little too much, to be honest with you.
It's, you know,
fuck it. He deserves it.
It's Forrest Gump.
Not a great. That movie is not as good as everybody says it is.
It's not, but it's also not all bad. So
no, it's unfocused.
Yeah, it's.
Well, I don't know about unfocused, but I do agree that it's achieved a level of like this iconic level that I think pisses a lot of people off, because when you look at the movie, it's like, well, is it really that good?
The problem is that it's a darn solid movie that had the misfortune of being made in a year when there were a lot better movies that it's managed to beat out for the Best Picture Oscar.
Yes, it's kind of like this year where Dunkirk is already like everyone's like, yep, that's going to win Best Picture. But
and I liked Dunkirk quite a bit. I thought it was a really great movie, but no, it's not.
It's not Blade Runner 2049.
And even that,
that's not going to win Best Picture. I mean, as much as I love Blade Runner 2049, that's not going to win.
No, it's not. But I prefer that over Dunkirk.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, I'll agree to that much. I would prefer it over Dunkirk.
It's not going to win Best Picture, but
who would you give Best Picture to at this point in the year? Let's talk about that for a second.
Get Out, probably.
Really? That's not a bad choice. That's a good choice.
I think that Get Out, given the cultural climate that we're in right now, I think Get Out stands a strong chance of a Moonlight-style reversal, where the Academy really goes for what's more culturally relevant over what is the most likely the crowd-pleasing Best Picture nominee.
I'd like to see the Florida Project, honestly, get it.
Really?
Since I have not seen the Florida Project, I can't vouch for it, but I've heard really great things, and I really want to see it.
Yeah, it's coming out very soon in more places. It's one of those rollout releases.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the year's not over yet. We got more movies, and
so if we're talking movies that we want to see for Best Picture, I still think The Lost City of Z is one of the best movies I've seen this year, and that movie was criminally underrated, so that might be pretty high on my list. But I'd have to put it together because I've seen, that's a hard thing to think about, and I'm still catching up on movies from when I got injured. So
clearly, Charlie Sheen's 9/11 deserves some credit. I think we can all agree on that.
I think what we can agree on is
that
we can all agree that 9/11 was Charlie Sheen's 9/11.
9/11 was a Charlie Sheen job.
Charlie Sheen is his own 9/11. He doesn't need a movie to qualify that.
Yeah.
I would have to revisit my list of the top 10 of the year. I don't have my main computer on right now, but I don't know. It's hard to say. I'm really curious what's going to get nominated for Best Picture, because I think, again, the climate of the Academy is changing a bit as the older members leave and maybe younger members or members that are more seasoned in what they've seen enter it. What if Logan got nominated for Best Picture?
I think Only the Brave has a solid chance of a nomination.
That's probably accurate, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Only the Brave? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
It's really that good?
Absolutely, yeah. I would put that on my top tier of movies of the year so far.
What about, I'm looking at my favorites list thus far that I've compiled on Letterboxd. Okja.
It
won't, because it's only a Netflix film.
Oh yeah, they're having that argument about that, right? Yeah.
It is getting a U.S. theatrical release later this year, so I think that's probably their bid to get it pushed into the Academy, but I really don't think that's got enough traction to get a nomination this year.
I liked Okja, but I also thought that it's a little bit too in love with its with its political themes. It feels a little bit too what's the word?
Pretentious?
Not even pretentious. It maybe pretentious. It wants to tell you that you don't know anything about how things work in this world.
Okay, what about The Big Sick? I actually think The Big Sick has a good shot of at least a nomination.
That's possible.
Yeah, I think screenwriting for sure.
I think that if The Big Sick does get nominated, it will be a sort of a consolation nomination.
Yeah, it would be like the 10th nominee kind of thing.
Well, they haven't hit 10 in years.
Right, but that's what I mean.
Yeah, okay.
If it does, it would be the last one they nominate.
I'm looking at my favorites list right now, and hardly any of them are strong contenders for Best Picture. They're completely obscure and would never get nominated.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
That's just me, I guess. I don't know.
No, it's not just you. I mean, my list is similarly eclectic, including Lemon.
Yeah, I got Lemon on here.
The gorilla movie. I can't remember what it's called.
Silvio. Oh, Silvio.
Silvio. Yeah. I knew it was something starting with an S. Why did you say when I said gorilla movie? Why did you say Brigsby Bear?
I don't know. I was looking at the poster for Brigsby Bear and it said gorilla movie, and I thought, oh, Brigsby Bear? I don't know. I don't know why. It's a bear. It's not a gorilla.
The difference between gorillas and bears.
Right.
I must say that I think that I think Death Race 2050 should win.
Yes. I am still exploring opportunities to get Death Race 2050 on my top 10 of the year.
I still have a Good Time and Marjorie Prime on my list.
Marjorie Prime is on mine. Yeah.
Okay. Wonder Woman is somewhere on here. Oh, there it is.
For some reason, on my list of 2017 movies, I put Frailty, and I'm like, wait a second, that's 2001. What happened here?
The Mark Wahlberg movie. Is that what that was? The Mark Wahlberg movie that I'm thinking of, or am I thinking of something else?
Wasn't Frailty Richard Gere?
No, Frailty is Bill Paxton.
Oh, why am I thinking Mark Wahlberg? What was the Mark
Fear?
Wahlberg? Yeah, that's what the one where he plays an insane boyfriend. Yeah.
Yeah, Fear.
And ironically, I don't think that's a movie he regrets making, though he did regret making Boogie Nights for some reason.
Interesting.
Free Fire is one of my favorite movies,
it,
but that movie will never get nominated.
Leonardo, which movie?
Free Fire.
Yes. Free Fire is great. Leonardo DiCaprio, he turned down Boogie Nights to be in Titanic, and he still, to this day, considers that the biggest mistake of his career.
Well, I don't know. I mean, he made a lot of money, and that's, I don't know.
He made a lot of mistakes, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe he thought Titanic, because he became kind of a pop culture, little teenage girl dream guy for them for a while, and I guess that was kind of annoying.
I think now that he's older, I think he respects what Boogie Nights did on a cultural level more than what Titanic did on a pop culture level.
Yeah, which is funny. I'm like, Mark Wahlberg can't appreciate Boogie Nights. I mean, the movie wasn't about his prosthetic cock.
Yeah,
the movie was about family, essentially. This weird
like
dysfunctional family.
Film. Sorry, man.
Well, that's different. I mean, come on, dude. Boogie Nights really was about family. But not the Fast and Furious movies. That's like a superficial family.
Right.
That's like let's end with a barbecue. You know what I mean? Like what?
Wow, that's poignant, man.
Seriously,
let's end with a barbecue.
Let's just end the movie with a barbecue, and let's say grace and let's be a family. But you did nothing in the previous runtime to really suggest that you're this tight knit group, except say stupid shit. That's cliched.
Plus, there's always a member of your group who's on the outs.
Right.
Meanwhile, is kind of the way families.
Meanwhile, in Boogie Nights, you get this true blue dynamic of a group of people that kind of form a misfit family,
Yeah.
And the dissension of that family. Oh my God.
Yes, and then of course they come back together and hopefully stay together. But it doesn't end with a fucking barbecue. It ends with them filming another porno.
Yeah.
Family.
Yes. You're a big star. You're a big, bright, shining star.
But it's a family porn.
That one's a good
No, it's not like that. No, God. It's not fucking taboo.
Oh, God. So,
Ken saw the HBO documentary Spielberg, which is
about
Spielberg. Okay. Steven Spielberg. Yeah.
And it's a very solid documentary about Steven Spielberg. If it's sort of like how last year De Palma was a solid overview of a career, Spielberg is as well. The difference being De Palma really went through detail, going through every single movie that De Palma made.
And it was all one interview with
right. Versus Spielberg isn't so dogmatic at focusing on literally everything. It skips a few things. Notably, the movie barely references Hook, and never even for a moment references Always.
That's too bad. Okay.
Wait,
I would have at least mentioned it.
Just so you know, Hawk, if we're going to do movies like the worst movies by a famous director, I fully am intent on having you watch Always.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I've seen part of it, and
it's not even that bad of a movie. It's just that it's kind of generic and bland.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating for the Spielbergisms that come through despite the blandness. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I see that.
So anyway, but as far as the documentary goes, it deals with a lot of material that you've seen before, but it puts it together in a nice tight package, and yes, nice tight package.
We were just
This is
talking
not
about
Boogie Nights.
Yeah. Okay.
God damn it.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. So, I don't have too much to say about it other than I found it a very enjoyable 2.5 hours, which it's a lengthy doc and worth it because of his, he's had a long career. So, he's earned a 2.5 hour documentary. And, yeah, see Spielberg on HBO.
All right.
It's not like a cinematic quality documentary that will be nominated for best documentary or anything like that. It's just a solid way to learn a little bit more about one of the great and inspirational filmmakers of our era. So, so Suburbicon.
Suburbicon. All right, so I want to preface this by saying that I have not. This is a movie was written by the Coen brothers, and then the script was then rewritten by George Clooney and his cohort, whose name escapes me at this moment.
I know who you're talking about. He's usually the producer of Clooney's movies.
Yeah, he works with Eastwood a lot. Let me see here. But in any case, while I look for that, Grant Heslov.
Yes. Yeah, he was in the first Scorpion King. He played the comic relief.
Really?
Which is the reason why he moved to writing.
Producing and writing movies, yeah.
Oh, shit, you're right. Anyway, Suburbicon is one of the most frustrating and disappointing movies I've seen all year. It's not one of the worst, but it is heartbreaking in a certain sense because I haven't read the original Coen Brothers script, but I saw somebody online who posted about it and did a bullet point list of all the things, all the ways in which the original script differed from the finished movie, and all of the original script ideas in a script that was written shortly after Blood Simple back in the 80s were distinctly Coen. And then everything about what George Clooney and Grant Heslov change in the script, it distinctly works against that. This is very much two different movies working against each other. So it's Suburbicon is this 1950s idyllic neighborhood where everybody knows each other and every house looks the same and all the lawns are perfectly mowed and there's a supermarket and a church and everything's just really nice. And then a black family moves in and this causes a lot of friction because nobody in that town wants a black family living in the town because that conflicts with their idea of what the perfect neighborhood life should be. That's the part that really doesn't work. The actual core of the story is that the Gardner family. Is the Gardner family? Maybe the guy's first name is Gardner. Like I lost track of some of the names in the movie because I was paying more attention to
Matt Damon's family, right?
Yeah, Matt Damon's family. Anyway, Matt Damon's family is him, his son Nicky, played by Noah Jupe, and then his wife Rose, played by Julianne Moore, as well as her twin sister, Margaret. So late at night, these robbers break into the house, and they chloroform the whole family. And they chloroform Rose a second time, the wife, and she dies. And then Margaret moves in, and she dyes her hair to look like Rose, and they start talking about the insurance money. So right away, Nicky knows that something is wrong. So about now, if you guys have watched the trailer, you know that what I'm describing to you as the plot really is not congruent at all with what you saw in the trailer, right?
Right, yeah. To me, the plot that the trailer spells out is that like Matt Damon's in like something with the mob or something.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the biggest problems. And I know this is not the fault of George Clooney or anybody involved with making the movie. It's more of a marketing issue. But almost literally every single scene in the trailer is taken out of context of what actually happens in the film. So the movie that you watch is completely different than the movie that you're pitched in the trailer. This is basically Fargo. Matt Damon and his wife's sister kill the wife and collect the insurance money so they can move away to to an island and live together. And the kid Nicky knows what's up, and that's kind of what it is. And that's the biggest problem, is that even that could work because there are elements that could be funny. But you have the two robbers played by. Hold on, I'm looking.
And so, since the screenplay was written before Fargo, the sense that you seem to be getting from what I'm hearing here is that the Coens took what worked about the screenplay and made that into a movie, and then they sold the rest to George Clooney. And yeah.
This movie feels like somebody made a fan film because they loved Fargo and Blood Simple, and then they asked the Coen brothers, "Hi, I love your movie. Can you write some characters for me?" They create some basic characters, and then this student filmmaker makes a movie using those elements with no understanding of why they're supposed to work. So the two robbers are played by Alex Hassel and Glenn Fleshler. Alex Hassel is a very tall, very gangly guy with big eyes. He's kind of goofy looking. Glenn Fleshler is even goofier looking. He's got everything about him is round. He's just a round person. A very, very large gut with a thin neck and a very large round head. And both of these guys are very comical. And these are the kind of characters, the kind of actors that you would see playing comic relief, doofy, idiotic thugs in a Coen Brothers movie. But there's nothing comical about them in this movie. They're just fucking sinister and they want to kill people. And so there's this huge sense of dissonance with everything about the movie. Where every time that you think something should be funny, it's undermined by something sinister. And while the scenes that are very sinister can be very creepy and effective, it still is shot and framed, and you get the spirit of something that is supposed to be funny, so it kind of sucks all the tension out of it. So it's a very, very dissonant movie in tonally like that. And also the whole thing with the Black family was something that may or may not have been in the original script. I've heard conflicting things, but every once in a while you get a cut back to the Black family, the Myers, that moved to their new house, and the whole town is upset with it. They're rioting, they're surrounding the house and banging on drums and screaming, and then you cut back to the action with Matt Damon's family, with all this stuff going on with them. So I know that George Clooney was trying to create this, kind of hold up a mirror to people. It's like, look at you guys being so upset at somebody who has a different skin color than you, when right next door, literally to you, you have a guy who murdered his wife and plans on murdering his son because he hired two thugs, and so on and so forth. Right. How stupid is that? The problem is that the entire Myers storyline feels like a complete afterthought. Like, you have the main Matt Damon storyline, and then every once in a while, like, oh, I almost forgot. We got to talk about the Black people and the racial problem in America. It really, really feels like that. And I didn't even really realize what George Clooney was doing until the end. I was like, I think he's trying to paint some ironic picture, but it feels so haphazard and lackadaisical that it really doesn't become effective or thematic at all. Now, it's worth noting that there are a couple of good things in the movie. Oscar Isaac shows up, and right away, when Oscar Isaac is in the movie for his two scenes, the movie lights up. Okay. Because Oscar Isaac is a Coen Brothers alum, so he knows what he's doing when working with his script. So he's an insurance claim investigator, and he has one of the best monologues in the whole movie. He's coming in because he's looking into the insurance claim made by Matt Damon and the stepsister, and he's talking. He's like, I got a nose for these things, and every once in a while, when I get a bad claim and I know something's up, I get a whiff. I get a whiff of something bad. And Rose or Margaret is already very nervous, and then he says, "With this though, I didn't get a whiff." And she's like, "Oh, that's good." He's like, no, this fucking stinks. I could smell it when I got off the turnpike. And so it's like his monologue is amazing, and Oscar Isaac, everything about his performance and the way he does his role is just terrific. And I wish he was in the movie more than just 2 scenes.
Right.
The other thing, and I don't know if you guys care about spoilers or anything.
Not really.
Not with this. No.
Not really. Okay, so later on in the film, the kid Nicky, he's calling his uncle. His uncle is the one guy that's been looking out for him in the movie and is like, call me for anything. Call me. Who's the guy that loves you like a son? And so Nicky calls him, and Rose sorry, I keep saying Rose. Margaret. It's the same actress. Margaret is going to poison a sandwich and some milk to kill Nicky. And he doesn't end up eating it, but she grinds up some pills and sprinkles it on the sandwich and sprinkles it in the milk. And then way later on in the movie, the only people left alive are Matt Damon and the kid, Nicky. And Matt Damon, he like pulls the sandwich and the milk and he starts eating. He's like, and he starts talking about how like how adults are smart and adults are smarter than kids. And he's doing this while he's just devouring the sandwich and drinking the milk. And that probably got the best laugh out of the theater because everybody knows this is a great Chekhov's gun moment because everybody knows that shit is poison, but he doesn't. He's just smashing this sandwich and drinking it and talking about how he's the smart one and he outsmarted everybody and he's the one that won and he's the one that's going to kill the kid if he tells anybody. Mm-hmm. So that was a really great moment. But again, it takes out of context the trailer, where the trailer, you picture it as Matt Damon saved his son and now he's eating a sandwich because we just had violence, now let's have a meal. Right. But
yeah, nothing you described sounds anything like what I expected when the trailer came out. So I'm super baffled by it.
It's incredibly baffling, and it's even more baffling is that there are a couple of scenes, especially with the ones with Oscar Isaac, where you kind of get the sense that George Clooney knows what he's doing. There's a great sense of style to the movie. It opens with this like nuclear family, like, welcome to Suburbicon, where we have this and we have a supermarket. We even have our own choir, and everybody loves each other here. And like that's that kind of like, old timey TV. Like this is where you want to live,
right?
And then the mailman walking around, he's waving. He's like, "Hello, Mrs. So and So. Hello, Mr. So and So." And like everybody knows each other and everybody's happy. And even there's this great little comedic moment where he opens the door to the Myers house and the black lady comes out. And he's like, "Oh, is Mrs." He talks to the house before them and says, "Have you met the new neighbors?" And she's like, "No, I haven't. They're probably nice though." And he's like, "We'll find out," or whatever. And he goes to them and the black lady opens the door. He's like, "Oh, is Mrs. Myers about?" And she's like, "Well, I am Mrs. Myers." And the mailman's holding him in a chain. He's like, "Oh, okay." And he starts to walk away. She's like, "That's my mail, right?" He's like, "Oh yeah, here you go." And then the next house over, he's like, Have you met the new neighbors? And his whole demeanor is different. So there's this whole sense of a screwball comedy being set up. And then it totally butchers all of that by trying to be racial commentary, screwball comedy, sinister murder mystery, and coming-of-age story all at once. And it completely fucks all 4 of them because it has no idea what it wants to be.
Well, that's a thoroughly disappointing presentation.
Yes, I'm really upset by this movie because I was really looking forward to it. The trailers were really fun. And I should have known at one point when everybody's like, "The trailer looks funny!" And George Clooney is like, "It's not. It's not a funny movie. It's not a comedy. It's a really messed up thriller."
Yeah.
And it is. It's funny a couple of times, like with the sandwich eating, which was funny, and Oscar Isaac, which was kind of funny, and then every once in a while there's a funny line, but overall there's some really dark, sinister shit in this movie. Like one of the characters gets killed because somebody put lye in his drink.
Oh, Christ.
And he drinks it, and all of a sudden he starts talking, and then he starts like squeaking and coughing, and he starts screaming, and the camera zooms in on his bloodshot eyes, and he like runs around the house and out the front door screaming and gasping and gagging for help. And then it was alarming. I was like, Jesus. And there's a lot of that shit in that movie. And then there's another sequence right shortly after that where a character is driving and yelling at Matt Damon's character, and then he gets hit head on by a fire truck.
Is there a degree to which the movie might actually be like if you went in without any expectations, you might have thought differently of it? The trailers ruin the movie completely.
The trailers ruin the movie completely, but I don't think the trailers are the movie's only problem.
Oh, okay.
Even if you wouldn't have seen the trailers, I still think that anybody who went in fresh would still notice a distinct tonal dissonance with it.
Okay.
Like every single review I've seen, and ostensibly all these reviewers have seen the trailers, reference the fact that this is multiple movies trying to coexist in one 100-minute movie. Like, It's an hour and 45 minutes. It's relatively short, and it tries to do so much in that amount of time, and none of it really works. And I think even without seeing the trailer, you could see that quite clearly.
I see. Okay. I was just curious because, it's one of those things where sometimes, like, expectations for a movie can completely taint the movie itself once you actually get a chance to see it.
Yeah. I mean, I think the performances are okay. Julianne Moore is fine. Matt Damon is fun enough. Like, he kind of knows what he's doing, and it's a kind of a different performance seeing him as, like, kind of a, he's kind of a, like, whoop-a-doo, I'm the father of the house in the trailers, again, going back to that, but he's actually quite cunning in this movie.
I hope that's actually dialogue in the movie. Whoop-a-doo!
It's not, unfortunately.
Because I would watch that.
But the Noah Jupe as Nicky, I just wanted to call him out, was really good. Apparently, the original Coen Brothers script was written in mind with him being the sole perspective of the movie. And Jupe really carries a lot of the movie on his shoulders with his emotional response to what he sees and his fear and the way he kind of tries to use his own cunning to survive the situation. So I'm really excited to see what else Noah Jupe is in, because he's a pretty promising talent. But the rest of the movie's a mess. I wouldn't recommend it.
All right. Well, thank you for providing us with that review and saving us from ourselves.
Yeah.
And on the note of thanks, thank you for your service. That was a terrible segue.
That's right. I have another segue after that, so we'll get there.
All right. What's your segue?
Oh, no. I mean, after you talk about thank you.
Oh, I thought you had another example of a segue to use.
No. I mean, you'll hear it when you hear it.
All right.
if I remember.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So before I mention thank you for your service, before not mention, I obviously just did. Before I review thank you for your service, I have to mention that there's this movie that came out years ago, right? Literally within a year or two of the end of World War II, that bears a striking resemblance to this movie.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of The Best Years of Our Lives?
Heard of it, not watched it.
So The Best Years of Our Lives, the plot of that movie, it follows 3 World War II veterans who've come home from the war, and each of whom is tainted by the war in their own ways, and they have to figure a way to essentially readapt themselves to society. It's directed by William Wyler, and it's really one of the great all-time war films ever made, because it's not about the war in terms of battle. It's about the war that people fought when they got home and realizing that the life that they had been leading for the last few years really changed them. And
why does the poster look like a fucking sitcom?
Because this was post World War II, and they didn't really know how to advertise things other than to make them look like, oh, this is happy and fluffy.
Yeah, Bill, pull up the trailer for the best years, or not the trailer, the poster for The Best Years of Our Lives.
Yeah,
starring these smiling people living in a house together and doing wacky things.
Well,
oh yeah, it does. It looks like the fucking Brady Bunch.
Yeah, I was gonna say Brady Bunch. Yeah.
So first of all, one thing I feel the need to mention, and what is probably the most fascinating aspect of The Best Years of Our Lives, is it's really the first movie in the post World War II era to really address things like post-war stress, and also the the damage that war leaves behind. One of the actors, Harold Russell, was a first-time performer. He was a non-professional. He was actually a Canadian-American soldier who lost both of his hands in the war, and he was cast to play a character who was dealing with those injuries and adjusting society with essentially hooks for hands. And the movie also deals with the destruction of the family. There's someone who comes home, fully expecting to start a family and live a normal life, and finds that life has left him behind in the years that he was gone. And it's really, in my opinion, one of the most spectacular films ever made. So what a daunting task it would be to take that same premise and inject it into the contemporary Iraq War era and succeed. I'm not saying Thank You for Service is a direct remake. It is not. It's based on a nonfiction book, and the characters are based on real people. But the premise that it follows is essentially the same, where it follows a handful of soldiers coming home from the Iraq War and the mental injuries that they carry with them.
That's why I'm really interested in this movie, is because I know you and I have talked at length about my general disdain for war movies, especially with what they kind of just do, which is usually nothing. But I had a lot of interest in the toll war takes on people psychologically. So the trailer immediately appealed to me in terms of that character study. Is that what it does?
Oh, absolutely. It's first of all, this has been a hell of a couple of weeks for Miles Teller, because Only the Brave hit it out of the park in a big way, and Thank You for Your Service is another spectacular performance from him. Now, the movie is not quite as big as I would say Only the Brave is, if only because the story Thank You for Your Service is telling. It's not territory that is completely untread. But that's not to say it's not an original idea, and it does deal with some elements of post-war stress that really haven't been explored. The plot of the movie: Miles Teller is Staff Sergeant Adam Schumann, who returns from the Iraq War to his wife he has a wife and a child, and his wife is expecting another baby, and he's determined this time he's not going to re-enlist. This is the end of it. He's going to do the civilian life the way a civilian would. And unfortunately, the injuries that are left behind in his mind are profuse, in that there were a handful of very specific incidents that just fucked him up. Involving the death of a couple of comrades, one of which he blames himself for, even though there's, so many, to blame oneself in that sort of circumstances, it seems impossible to not blame oneself, while at the same time, anyone with, logically wouldn't, logically you can't blame him, but that's not how a post-traumatic injury deals. And then you have another actor named Beulah Accola. He's actually a Samoan New Zealander actor who plays a Samoan American actor, soldier, and he is Schumann's one of his best friends from the military, and he comes home and is also feeling post-war stress. Most specifically, he's one of those soldiers who re-enlisted because it became the way for him to soothe his stress was to keep his head in the shit.
Okay.
And he's reached the point, though, where the stress of combat it has become so profuse that the military won't even take him back, because he's having memory lapses and other things that are just really screwing with him. And he's dealing with that. And then another friend of theirs literally kills himself within minutes of, within hours of returning from the war. And then one other friend that they mention and you don't see until much later has injuries that are much more obvious. It's I don't want to keep synopsizing because really it's a character study that deals with these people who are affected by the war in their own ways, and they have these things that they come home to. Some come home to more than others, but all of them are severely damaged.
The trailers call out that this is from the writer of American Sniper, and I had some serious problems with that movie because it kind of tried to balance the effects of war on a character with some like super like parkour war action with a fucking superhero snipers and slow motion gunshots and shit like that.
This movie does not have that problem.
It's what?
This movie does not have that problem. In fact,
good.
American Sniper is very much a Red Stater, Go America kind of movie. This does not have that aspect. In fact, few movies glamorize the Iraq War less than this. This movie makes it clear that war was a shit show.
Yeah.
Absolute shit show. And there's the soldiers who come home from it have nothing but, wish nothing more than to leave everything that they experienced there behind, because it did not, what they accomplished was just not worth their time. And in fact ruined them in many unfortunate ways. So anyway, you won't get any of that over patriotic trash that American Sniper had in it. The characters in this movie are certainly not anti-America or anything like that. This is, we're not dealing with like a Born on the 4th of July thing where, face it, here's your freaking war. Or lousy war, or fucking war. However he says it in that movie. I don't know.
That was a good impression.
Yeah. Was it?
No.
No. Now, Zach took issue with Amy Schumer. She appears in the movie. She has literally like 3 lines in the movie and barely any dialogue. So I can't even judge her performance. I'm not a fan of Amy Schumer's comedy. Never have been. But I'm not going to judge her performance because there isn't much of a performance. It seems like her character was more or less cut out of the film. She plays the wife of a soldier who did not come home. And
okay.
Because she's not funny, or because he died.
Wow. No, she didn't. The soldier did not come home because she's not funny. That's wow.
I actually like Amy Schumer a little bit, but I liked her. I like Trainwreck. I thought she was good in that, and that was a fine movie, But
it's all right.
Other than that, I can't speak too much personally about Amy Schumer, but I'm just making fun. Like I'm just having, I'm not saying like she's not funny or is funny. I'm just, I'm like, oh, did the soldier just leave her? Like, honey, you're not funny. I'd rather continue fighting in a war than live with you.
Yeah, no, the soldier was killed.
Okay, well, that's unfortunate.
Yeah. Anyway, it's it is a very it's a very serious-minded movie, and it deals with themes that are very real and as far as from a modern context, I would say important to note. It's just one of those things where it's a very hard movie to watch. The performances are excellent. There's some great supporting characters in the movie, particularly Accola, who plays the Samoan American soldier. Is really kind of a coming out party for him as an actor. He's had other roles before, but this is kind of his first big shot. And Omar Dorsey is another actor I want to highlight. He plays this drug smuggler character who appears in the movie, and it's a fascinating take. He's a character who he's a drug dealer, drug smuggler who was into the shit during the first Gulf War, and he dealt with his PTSD by becoming a drug dealer and essentially continuing to wage war in one way or another, and in this case, a drug war. So kind of a fascinating little piece there. I would say between this and Only the Brave see Only the Brave first, but this is certainly a movie worth watching.
What about that Shia LaBeouf movie where it was kind of a similar premise?
Man Down?
Yeah. Is that...
I've heard that is fucking garbage.
Okay.
Well, Miles Teller is kind of the younger, better Shia LaBeouf. They kind of looked like each other. You know, they're similar. Like, if you were a casting agent, you might put them on the same list, is all I'm saying.
Okay.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe.
Man Down has a 17% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh.
That's less than Jigsaw.
Oh, okay.
Now, the director of Thank You for Your Service, this is his first film as a director. His screenplays, though, this is literally his first decent movie because he also wrote Paranoia, which is famous as one of the few movies I've ever fallen asleep in the theater watching.
Oh, is that the Harrison Ford? Now I'm standing on your neck.
Yep.
Liam Hemsworth. With Liam Hemsworth, the worst.
Yeah.
Of all time.
Yeah, so he wrote that and American Sniper and some other movie I've never heard of with Ashton Kutcher called Spread.
Did you say Ashton Kutcher?
Yeah,
Ashton Kutcher. Yeah.
I think you said Kutcher.
Kutcher.
Oh
Kutcher,
no.
Kutcher. I thought it was Kutcher.
Kutcher.
You can say it however you want. I mean,
I don't know. It just threw me off.
You say potato, I say potato. Except actually, potato is objectively wrong.
Yes, yes, it is. I have yet to see a single person who says potato.
Yeah.
Or tomato.
Yes, I'd like a big potato, please, with my junior cheese champ. Thank you.
You know what I'll say, though, Hawk? I'll say, let's call the whole thing off.
Yeah.
I feel like you just threw a reference at me that I didn't get.
That's the lyric of the
song. Part of the song. Potato, potato, tomato, tomato. Let's call the whole thing off.
I'm not good with song lyrics.
Okay.